The Red Sea shipping crisis took a sharp and unexpected turn in July 2025, because after nearly 6 months of relative quiet, two major Houthi attacks suddenly shattered any sense that things were stabilizing. Even though shipping companies had already been operating cautiously, these incidents showed that the threat never really went away. What made this moment especially serious is that the attacks directly broke a ceasefire agreement between the United States and the Houthis, an agreement that was supposed to keep shipping lanes open and prevent exactly this kind of escalation. Instead of calm, the world was reminded just how fragile global trade routes can be and how quickly shipping disruptions can ripple into higher costs, inflation pressure, and renewed military tension. By early July, concerns about supply chains were already lingering, but these attacks reignited fears on a much larger scale. The Red Sea is not just another regional waterway, it is a vital artery for global trade. When violence flares up there, the consequences are felt far beyond the Middle East. Shipping companies, insurers, manufacturers, and governments all found themselves reassessing risks because the combination of physical danger and political uncertainty made business as usual impossible. And even though this wasn't the first time the Houthis had targeted ships, the timing and severity of these incidents made them especially disruptive. The first major incident unfolded on July 7, 2025, when a bulk carrier called the Magic Seas came under attack. The ship was flying a Liberian flag and was operated by the Greek firm Stem Shipping, and it was moving iron and fertilizer from China to Turkey. On paper, it was just another routine commercial journey, but in reality, it became a symbol of how vulnerable global shipping had become. The attack itself was highly coordinated and intense, involving gunfire, rockets, unmanned surface vehicles, missiles, drones, and explosive-filled remote-controlled boats. It wasn't a random strike, it was carefully planned and executed, showing that the Houthis still had both the intent and the capability to hit high-value targets. Even though the situation was chaotic, all 19 crew members were eventually rescued by a passing merchant vessel, which prevented the loss of life in this particular incident. But the ship itself sank, making it the first known commercial vessel destroyed by a Houthi attack in 2025. That fact alone sent shockwaves through the shipping industry because it ended the 6-month lull that many had hoped signaled a turning point. Instead, it became clear that the calm was only temporary and that the underlying risks had never truly disappeared. Just a day later, the crisis deepened even further with a second, far deadlier attack. Between July 8th and July 9th, the Houthis targeted another Liberian flag cargo ship, the Eternity Sea, which was also owned by Greek interests. This assault was even more devastating, both in human and political terms. 3 crew members were killed, 1 was seriously wounded and lost a leg, 6 were rescued, and 15 were reported missing after the ship sank on July 9th. To make matters even more alarming, the U.S. mission to Yemen later confirmed that some crew members had been taken hostage, adding a new and disturbing dimension to the crisis. The weapons used in this second attack highlighted just how sophisticated Houthi operations had become. Rocket-propelled grenades, small arms fire, drones, and explosive drone boats were all deployed in a coordinated assault. This level of complexity mattered because it showed that even after months of U.S. airstrikes, the Houthis were still able to plan and carry out large-scale operations against commercial shipping. Although U.S. officials had previously claimed significant progress in degrading Houthi capabilities, these attacks raised serious questions about how effective those efforts had really been. As news of the attack spread, attention quickly turned to the broader economic and logistical consequences. The Red Sea crisis has fundamentally reshaped global shipping patterns, and not in subtle ways. Roughly 30% of global container trade normally passes through the Suez Canal, so when that route becomes unsafe, the impact is immediate and severe. Since the crisis escalated, container shipments through the Red Sea have dropped by about 75% because shipping companies simply cannot justify the risk. In fact, about 95% of container ships that would normally pass through the area are now rerouting around Africa instead. This detour is not minor. Ships traveling via the Cape of Good Hope must add anywhere from 4,000 to 8,000 extra miles to their journeys, which translates into longer transit times, higher fuel costs, and increased strain on crews and equipment. On average, transit times for rerouted vessels have increased by around 30%. Even though ships are still moving, the effective global container shipping capacity has dropped by about 9% because vessels are tied up for longer periods on each trip.
It's time now for Explain and Verify. South Africa is home to several major ports. That's Durban, Cape Town, Port Elizabeth and Richards Bay. And this week we saw President Cyril Ramaphosa on a two-day oversight visit in the Eastern Cape and the port of Ngqura.
As companies adjust to these longer routes, certain ports have become far more important than before. South African ports like Cape Town and Durban have emerged as critical refueling and logistics hubs because ships passing around the southern tip of Africa need reliable places to stop and resupply. Traffic at these ports has surged, reflecting how much global shipping patterns have shifted. Even though these ports were already significant, the crisis has pushed them into a more central role in global trade. In the Mediterranean, ports such as Tanger Med in Morocco and Valencia in Spain have taken on greater importance as alternative gateways into Europe. Genoa has also seen increased traffic as ships divert away from traditional Asia-Europe routes. Meanwhile, Atlantic ports like Rotterdam and Antwerp are handling higher volumes of cargo coming from ships that took the longer African route. These changes matter because they reshape how goods move across continents, even though they also create congestion and logistical challenges at ports that weren't designed to handle such sudden increases in volume. On the Trans-Pacific side, Asian hubs like Hong Kong, Busan, and Tanjung Pelepas have seen more activity as shippers explore alternative routes to reach the United States through ports such as Los Angeles, Seattle, and Vancouver. Although this approach can work for some cargo, it adds significant time and cost for shipments that ultimately need to reach Europe. At the same time, emerging hubs like Jebel Ali in Dubai have gained strategic importance, serving as key transshipment points for cargo that can still move safely through parts of the Middle East corridor.
One of the world's most crucial trade routes, the Suez Canal, is under threat from Yemeni rebels.
Far from clear.
And experts are warning if this continues, it could have a major impact on the cost of pretty much everything. And the reason? 7 of the 10 biggest commercial shipping companies have decided the risk just isn't worth it. Those 7 companies make up 2/3 of the global shipping.
All of these disruptions have come with a steep financial price. Freight costs have exploded, with rate increases ranging from 200 to 400% on many major routes, especially between Asia and Europe. Shipping a container from Shanghai to Genoa now costs roughly 350% more than before, while rates from China to the US West Coast have jumped by about 140%. Even routes to the US East Coast have seen increases of around 120%. On top of base rates, companies are now paying additional war risk premiums, emergency surcharges, and sharply higher insurance costs, which in some cases have risen by as much as 20%. These higher costs are not evenly distributed across industries. The automotive sector has been hit particularly hard, especially in Europe, where several auto plants have announced temporary shutdowns because critical parts from Asia were delayed. New energy vehicles, which are a major component of China-Europe trade, are especially vulnerable to these disruptions. Retailers have been somewhat insulated in the short term because many locked in freight rates for the first half of 2025, but as the crisis drags on, renegotiations are becoming unavoidable. Manufacturing more broadly is facing what amounts to an adverse supply shock, because longer transit times reduce effective capacity and force companies to rethink production schedules. Against this backdrop, the U.S. policy response has come under intense scrutiny. In May 2025, President Trump announced a ceasefire agreement with the Houthis, mediated by Oman. Under this deal, both sides agreed not to target each other. U.S. vessels in the Red Sea were supposed to be protected, and the Houthis pledged to stop interfering with shipping lanes. However, the agreement did not cover attacks on Israel, which left a significant loophole. The July attacks clearly violated the spirit and the letter of this deal, raising questions about whether diplomacy alone can stabilize the situation. Before the ceasefire, the United States had launched Operation Rough Rider on March 15, 2025. Over the course of that campaign, U.S. forces struck more than 1,000 Houthi targets and claimed to have killed hundreds of fighters and multiple leaders. Despite these efforts, the Houthis retained the ability to strike commercial shipping, which suggests that military action alone was not enough to neutralize the threat. The campaign also resulted in civilian casualties, which fueled humanitarian concerns and complicated the political calculus. The role of the Houthis in the Red Sea crisis cannot really be separated from the Gaza war, because their actions are closely tied to the wider Iran-Israel proxy conflict playing out across the Middle East. After the Hamas-led attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, which sparked the ongoing war in Gaza, a number of Iran-backed militant groups across the region quickly lined up in support of the Palestinians. The Houthis, who control large areas of Yemen and were firmly established as a regional power by 2024, became one of the most visible actors in this broader response. Although the fighting was centered in Gaza, the conflict immediately took on a regional dimension. The Houthis framed their involvement as part of a larger struggle against Israel and its allies, especially the United States. Houthi leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi openly warned Washington not to intervene on Israel's behalf, making it clear that any U.S. military support could trigger retaliation. He specifically threatened drone and missile strikes, signaling that the group was willing to expand the conflict beyond Israel's borders, even though Yemen itself was not directly involved in the Gaza fighting. As the war continued, the Houthis began linking their Red Sea attacks directly to events in Gaza. They argued that disrupting shipping lanes was a form of pressure on Israel and its supporters, rather than random aggression. Because of this framing, the group set clear political conditions for ending its maritime campaign. The Houthis demanded a ceasefire in the Gaza war and an end to the Israeli blockade of the Gaza Strip, presenting these demands as non-negotiable. This connection matters because it explains why military strikes alone have failed to stop Houthi attacks. Even though international forces have targeted Houthi positions, the group continues its operations because it sees them as leverage tied to the Gaza conflict. As long as the war in Gaza continues and the blockade remains in place, the Houthis are likely to justify ongoing attacks as part of a wider regional confrontation, keeping the Red Sea firmly entangled in the politics of the Middle East. At the same time, the shipping crisis has collided with the Trump administration's aggressive tariff policies, creating a double burden for businesses and consumers. In 2025, the average U.S. tariff rate sits at around 25% across the board, representing a 15.4 percentage point increase in the effective tariff rate. According to Federal Reserve analysis, these tariffs have already contributed about 0.3% to core goods price increases. When combined with soaring shipping costs, the inflationary pressure becomes much more intense. For investment goods, a 25% tariff can push prices up by nearly 9.5%, while consumer goods may see increases of around 2.2%. When shipping rates rise by 200 to 400% on top of that, businesses are squeezed from both sides. They face higher costs for imported inputs and higher transportation expenses, which are often passed along to consumers. Economists warn that this combination could significantly accelerate inflation, with estimates suggesting that Red Sea disruptions alone could add 0.7 percentage points to global core goods inflation and about 0.3 percentage points to overall core inflation. Sectors like toys, electronics, and automotive parts are particularly exposed. Looking ahead, most analysts agree that the crisis is unlikely to be resolved quickly. Industry experts expect disruptions to persist well into 2026 because there is little chance that major container lines will return to Suez routing in the short or medium term. The underlying political conflict, including Israeli operations in Gaza, remains unresolved, which means the root causes of the crisis are still in place. As long as that's the case, shipping companies will continue to prioritize safety over speed. In the longer term, the Red Sea crisis is accelerating structural changes in global trade. Companies are actively diversifying routes to reduce dependence on the Suez Canal,